everyone. I am here in the back of a Uber because it is getting to the end of January, and I've always had the tradition of doing a best of 2022, all the way dating back to 2009, and I need to get that in. Even if no one watches it, even if it's irrelevant, I normally do top 12 shows, and then after that I do 10 honorable mentions, and at that point there's still so much to go. I'm still being pretty selective at cutting it off at 22 shows. So I'm going to start alphabetically. I'm going to go with Adventure Beast. It is a Netflix animated show. To give you some background, a lot of times think about how animated shows can be more gruesome while still being funny and still being not off-putting, because you're not actually seeing people get hurt or actual blood get splattered, which happens a lot on this show. It is a show starring Bradley Trevor Grieve, who is a famous naturalist in Australia. He's not an American name, but he has a very unique comic personality. He is a guy who loves animals so much that he is gladly willing to get himself mauled and sacrificed and torn apart just to be able to get up close and study them. And you think this might not be as funny as it is on paper, but it is quite funny. And he also has a great complement of two people. His niece, who's just too overenthusiastic and shares too much information sexually, and his field assistant, who is extremely timid and very not cut out for this work. And they make a great contrast in response to the main character. And the show, you initially think it's going to be kind of pedantic, like Madge's school bus, or where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, and pedantic just means educational. You think it's going to be educational, but it's a lot more than that. So after that, I have Derry Girls. It's certainly one of the kind of very authentic, very regionally specific, very culturally specific coming-of-age teenage stories that have really been populating TV lately, alongside like Never Have I Ever is another example of this genre done really well. And Derry Girls, you kind of need a translator to figure out everything they're saying. It's set in the 90s with a cast of 4 girls and 1 guy who's forced to go to a girls' school because I guess money's tight, and it's kind of a running joke that the school is extremely unable to accommodate the fact that they have a guy at the school, and he's just part of the scene anyway. I think the show made a lot of great choices this season and kept the show from becoming stale in its third season. It sort of paired a couple characters up romantically. You can kind of guess who, because one's a guy, and there aren't a lot of girls. One's his cousin, and one's kind of lesbian, and one's almost mentally unable. That's Orla, the sort of Cloud Cuckoo-lander on the show, so you can kind of guess. And they kind of put the brakes on it really fast because not everything's about teenage romance or shipping, and I kind of don't like shipping. They also have an episode where they have the adults at a class reunion, and they kind of sink into that same pettiness that the girls are known for. The show continues to have, relevance to, I would say, the political scene, but that's usually in the background. It's just generally has a great cultural specificity and a time capsule quality to it. I do wish Claire would tone down the sort of shrieking all the time. Then I have the show Dicktown. It does sound like a dirty word, but it is a animated series set in North Carolina with the brilliant essayist John Hodgman and David Rees, who is probably less of a known name. And it's about the premise is sort of, what if Encyclopedia Brown never grew up? If he was stunted and he was still solving high school mysteries into middle age and living on a houseboat with very few adult relationships. And it's a very entertaining riff on sort of the detective series. Again, it has a lot of character specificity, and it also has some very great dynamics at play. It's also interesting because it's generally 15 minutes per episode. This airs on FX. Derry Girls is Hulu, by the way. Then Dropout. There are a lot of great miniseries lately. Inventing Anna was another one that sort of catalog some big crime in the news. I think it's sort of a TV companion piece to podcasts. This starred Amanda Seyfried as a really brilliant performance about a woman who kind of did her own version of code switching, where she adopted a deeper voice when talking to male business colleagues. And there are all sorts of interpretations and ways to see this real-life figure. I think that's what generally makes celebrity scandals fascinating, is that we project our own values onto these celebrities as Rorschach tests of sorts. Amanda Seyfried is Elizabeth Holmes was a person who was disliked before she even started to do wrong. There's a professor played by Laurie Metcalf who has her own vendetta against Amanda Seyfried simply because she's not part of the establishment. That's my take on a certain bias that she was facing by academia against academia that worked both ways when she started to do wrong. I would kind of view the story as someone who told a lie, and she had to just maintain the lie because of capitalism and other forces. Some might view her as guilty, but the point is that it's a really interesting thing to debate. It's also a very sprawling ensemble that starts to include Sam Waterston and William H. Macy and the kid from 13 Reasons Why, Dylan Minnette, I believe was his name. And I think it's a very fascinating read. Then I have Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I think in the show's 13th season. 4th season. Why did I say 13th season? The show didn't show us a lot of new tricks, but continued to grow the character. Whether the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Midge Maisel, the stand-up comedian, her fortunes are going up or down. I think the interesting thing is that she is kind of improving her savviness and growing. I think a lot of multi-arc series have to keep their characters being from having too much success too early, and there's a lot of tragedy in Midge's story arc. It also, I think, especially this season, is a show about a woman with parents navigating her relationship, a woman with kids rather, navigating her relationship with her adult parents, and I don't see a lot of shows doing that so much. I mean, I know that Everybody Loves Raymond made a huge deal about it, but this has the period feel where we know that there were certainly different dynamics between adults and their Jewish parents in the 1950s. That's highly interesting. And also, I think the show deserves credit for the character of Joel. Like the characters played by Chris Pratt in Parks and Recreation, where he's just intended to show to be a bad guy, to show the disposable side of men that the heroine can grow past. Joel might kind of soon be back in the game, and good for him on, I guess, getting married or getting engaged to this very anti-stereotypical East Asian woman. And I just think the show is continuing to grow in small strides rather than humongous leaps. I also have the Orville, New Horizons. I think the show had about 4 or 5 episodes that hooked me, and some episodes that didn't so much, but I think the show, I think I can admire that every one of the show's episodes, every time it's on, the show goes big. I also think the cast is gelling a lot. Unlike some others, I actually like the addition of Ensign Charlie Burke, because I've always been doubtful of the utility of AI characters like Data in science fiction shows. To me, you're a toaster or you're not a toaster, and she helps make the Isaac plotlines more palatable. I think the most ridiculous thing of the show is having Isaac get married to a human, and Penny Gerard Johnson almost sells it. And I also really enjoyed the episode where Scott Grimes' character Gordon goes back in time and has this whole rich life. But I think I would, whether an episode hit or miss, I think again it's just the entire dynamics of the show is really good. I also really applaud Steve Levitan for doing something new. He was on Modern Family for 9 seasons. I believe, where just the show really outgrew its usefulness. And now you can see his genius at work. This is a man who did Just Shoot Me. He's really good with family dynamics. And he combined that with a TV behind-the-scenes drama with a found family and 4 characters who were on a sitcom together and sort of are all facing bad luck and they need each other, and a daughter and her estranged father who are rebooting, who are the executive team behind a sitcom. And there's a lot of great character dynamics, a lot of fun. This is a show that I think takes a cue from sort of Tina Fey and Robert Carlock, where they're really thriving without the laugh track. And I know most shows don't do that, but I mean, I think there's definitely a very natural rhythm to the humor. The Resort is kind of a strange beast. That show is on Peacock, so that's a good reason to get Peacock. It is a show that is about a couple who, on their 10th anniversary, the spark is gone from their relationship. They're played by Kristen Milianti and The Good Place's William Jackson Harper, and they get the spark back by solving a mystery, but then the mystery starts to get supernatural, and the mystery involves a teenage couple just high on newfound love who kind of represent a big contrast to the main couple. It's only, I believe, 8 episodes. I think it was a really great genre shift where it started out as one thing and moved to another genre. I really do recommend this film. I really do recommend this TV show, but I think you have to know in advance that things are gonna change a little, and that it's also a little like Lost, where you got to pay attention to the clues quite a bit in the first couple episodes. Moving towards the end of my list, I have Shantaran. It's on Apple TV. It's an epic. It's like Sense8, where it's just very ambitiously set somewhere else in the world, and you are just engrossed with, I think, this environment. It's set in India in the 1980s. It's based on or maybe earlier. It's based on a prison. It's based on a real life story of a prison escapee who tried to create a new life for himself in India and ended up embroiled a little bit in underworld politics in a quest to sort of save a village. It's certainly not a soap opera-ish thing with a lot of sexual politics or anything. It's more about a messiah-like figure trying to do good, and it's the novel itself is full of tall tales, and the story has that aura, but it's also sort of grounded in, again, something very culturally specific. Then I have The Way We See It, which stars Sosie Bacon, and she is a social worker who really devotes and really is invested in 3 autistic patients who all live in a group home of varying degrees of ability. And I myself am slightly on the autistic spectrum, so I can relate to this, but I think it really, and I can sometimes have trouble feeling empathy for autistic people, and I think this is definitely a game changer in terms of how we see those types of people, because in many ways they're not capable. I think I would have rated this higher if perhaps the show was less focused on some of the sexual relationships, because for a lot of autistic people, sexual relationships, especially with neurotypical people, aren't on the table, and it seemed to flow into the familiar tropes of a TV romantic comedy or something. It is essentially, I think that the testament is the greatness of it, I think, is kind of Sosie Bacon's her character, Mandy's endless patience and devotion to these 3 people, and that's something that the world doesn't have a lot of for autistic people a lot, and the dynamics within her as she tries to manage this and her own life and everything is extremely great. I believe that's 10. I know that I had I know that I was thinking of True Story with Ed and Randall on Peacock, but I don't think I should talk about that because I think I only have 10. So, thank you so much for watching, and I will also do a little write-up of all of this as well. Thank you very much.